Okay, I am back at Holden today. It's been a while since I've made a video. Saturday, I had a really busy week for many reasons. Work, my oldest dog was having heart issues and we had to take her to the vet, and a number of other things. Just a lot going on, so I didn't have as much time. But I really wanted to get out, and I have no idea what I really want to talk about or what I want to do or if it's going to rain. But I just felt like coming out and recording something. Whatever comes. The flow. Today is going to be a very busy day here at Holden as well, because there's something going on, some kind of event. There's a lot of little kids, so I don't know exactly what's going on, but I'm sticking a bit to the back side so I can get a little more solitude and see what comes to mind. Different things have come up throughout the week. Probably death being one of the biggest things. We were pretty close to thinking that my oldest dog might pass away. She was having these episodes. Sandy, I mean, gosh, I don't know how old she is now at this point, but very old. I can't remember if she's 12 or 13, or maybe even older than that. But we took her to the vet, and they've given her some heart medicine, some lung medicine, some diuretics. Vetmedin, I think, was the heart medicine to help dilate her heart. She has congestive heart failure, so we know she's old, and we know she had a lot of problems. I really don't know how the audio is going to come out with the wind today. I might not even be able to hear me. I might have to test this, otherwise it would be a little futile to be talking if you can't even hear. Let me pause this video and then review it and see if it's even worth talking today. Maybe it'll just be, well, it could just be a walk and look day. Let me take a look here. So I reviewed the video. I can hear myself a good percentage of the time, so maybe I will chance it and we'll just go for a walk, and if it doesn't record it, it's probably not important anyway. It's a lot of words. I guess the cool thing is just being out here, going for a walk and taking it all in, as I always do, and sharing a little bit of that joy with everyone, or because I don't know. We got one brave goose that's headed to the water. The best of them, because of me, probably. Oh, two geese. It's a nice day, but the sun was out earlier. Now the clouds have come out. It's still beautiful, no matter what's going on. I do prefer the sunshine. I wish it was a little sunnier, but I'll take it. At least it's pretty warm. I mean, it's 65 maybe. Just need a light jacket today. Maybe I'll go to some different places today. I don't know. We have a lot more places we could go to. We'll just play it by ear. Now we're here. Maybe we won't worry too much about what's next. It's awesome how we're getting all these little lily pads on the water. So yeah, dealing with death is never a fun thing, I guess. But it is always a good reminder and a good time to reflect and a good time to process what it's all about. We've talked about this before. And it's one thing to intellectualize and talk, and it's another thing to really understand at a deep level what's happening. But even with my dog, it's like, I just want to give her whatever time she has, a good life, let her still do the things she loves to do. I was talking to my daughter, my youngest daughter, Natalie, this morning, and she was wanting to take her for a walk up the street and wondering whether she should do it or not, and I said, do it. I mean, there's no reason not to do the things that she enjoys. Like, this is her life, and it's nearing the end. But it's important, I think, to keep going and to live your life in every moment with whatever you are able to do or want to do. And so for her, going for walks and just being with us and coming out into the backyard and playing and chewing on her bone, these are things she likes to do, and we'll just keep doing them as long as we can and go from there. So yeah, and the death of a person is another thing too. And to me, death is death. I don't differentiate a lot between the death of people, animals. Like, everything is always undergoing this process of change. And when you see it that way, you don't give more or less weight to anybody dying or any animal. It's all part of the cycle of life. And it's very important to realize, like, when you have fear of someone dying or yourself dying, or all these emotions that can arise, when you look at them, you see that a lot of it can be, and not to discourage anybody, but it can be sort of selfish way of looking at things, because death is like, well, I won't have that person anymore to talk to or to go places with, or whatever. You may think of, maybe you had good experiences with that person, but this is all you thinking of, like, things you've done in your own life, and then you're going to miss those things, right, those experiences. But when a person dies, they die, they're gone. There isn't really a reason to continue sulking and looking at pictures of the past and getting sad about time that were, which are no longer, right, do not exist. Memories don't exist. I don't really look at pictures that much of things in the past, because why? They don't exist. They're gone. I mean, every moment is gone after it's gone, whether it's a year ago or a minute ago. We have now, and that's what we have. So you should pay attention to what is going on in your life now, the people in your life in every moment, the things you're doing in every moment, the places you go. And people are going to come and go. It's the way life has worked. Both my parents have passed away, and I still think of them now and then, but I don't get upset about it, because there's nothing to really get upset about. Like, obviously I appreciate everything they did for me and all that, and I in some way I'm a continuation of their existence, as all children are continuations of their parents' existence, and that is what life is about. We each carry on what we have, what we've been given from our parents, from our grandparents. There's a long cycle as biological organisms. We are a continuation of our parents, so in some sense they're not gone any more than they ever were here. I am them. this was something Thich Nhat Hanh talked about a lot. I think I brought him up and I mentioned him, a Vietnamese Buddhist. I think he talks about an experience once when he went out into the night sky and saw the moon and the stars, and for some reason he felt his mother, who was passed, with him, realizing, not in any supernatural way, but in the fact that you are your parents, you are them. Physically, you were part of your mother and your father. Like, for a very long period of time, you were one with them. And when did you not become them? You know, and when you see the continuation, the cycles like that, you just see the change is being changed. You know, what is happening, death being a part of that. But it's nothing to get terribly sad about. It's nothing to be happy about. It is just an inevitable process that's occurring all the time, as we talked about. And then, you know, you can say the death of the organism is a very different sort of change, but it is always occurring somewhere, you know, everywhere. People are dying, people are being born, and life goes on. And in that sense, you can free yourself from the grief, you know, the tremendous grief that some people have over the passing of their loved ones. And it doesn't mean you've loved them any less, because really love is not about loving one person or one thing. And we've talked about this as well, that love is not a thing that has an object. Love has no object. Real, true love doesn't have an object. So you may feel guilty or think, well, I should be thinking of them more or doing more. Why? Do you think they're looking down at you and saying you should be thinking more of me? Like, again, if you are, you're thinking that. That's your thoughts playing tricks with you. Let go of all that nonsense, because none of that is true and none of that is real. They're not looking down at you. They're not saying anything. You have the ghost of them in your mind. If any of that is occurring, if these are just ghosts in your mind you need to let go of, echoes of the past. They're not there anymore. They're not there, they're not there. Let it go and move on and live your life every moment, driven by not your personal interests, but, you know, by the flow of life, the free flow of life. So yeah, I think that's, you know, I don't think about it much. The words that come now are because it's a question that I sort of pose to myself about death. You know, we start talking about it, but, you know, it's, the words run out, as we've said before, and there just really isn't anything there. That there's a freedom with not attaching yourself to the past in any way. And, you know, you can see the memories that are there, right? But they're just like images. You see them as images, not as things to control you or direct your actions or cause you to do things or feel things, right? Because when you give these images from the past power, then they act. Right? They act on you either through emotions. You know, they can evoke emotions, and if you don't let that happen, and not that you don't let it happen, you just watch it happen, right? Because you can't not let it happen, as we talked about before. Thoughts are going to do what thoughts are going to do, and let them do their thing. Watch, and then they die out on their own when they don't have sustenance. You know, you give them sustenance by paying attention to them. Well, not paying attention to them, by not paying attention to them, you know, letting them occur and then drive you. But if you pay attention to what's happening, because these thoughts are arising and leading to other thoughts, then they don't grab a hold of you. And they come and go just like clouds in the sky. And they're there, you can observe it and watch it while they're there, but then, you know, in a moment later they're gone. And you can watch this whole process of arising, falling, and realize that that is the eternal process of life, the cycle of body and mind, and the arising and dissolution of all conditioned things. This impermanence of thought and matter in life is always occurring. No need to dwell on it, no need to go into it, no need to deeply analyze it philosophically, or, you know, you could start your own religion that way. I mean, we don't need to do that. You can spend a lot of time thinking of all these ideas. Where does that get you? It doesn't change a thing. And this is why we get caught up in thinking as if it does change a thing. What does it change? It changes nothing. And what's here is what's here. If you observe what's here without any of that past coming into play, you don't worry about it. You don't have to figure anything out. There's nothing to figure out. Just be free from all of that analytical thinking. And then see what you're missing by doing that. When you're focused on your thoughts, you're not focused on what's actually happening now. And if you're focused on what's happening now, the thoughts don't arise. They don't have space to come in. And if they do, they're there briefly and gone. When you're really paying attention to what's happening now, there is no space for thought to interfere. And that is freedom. That is being free from time, free from thought, free from knowledge, free from the known, and something else opens up. Just the awareness of what's happening now, which is all there is. Nothing more. What else is there? The past isn't real. The future isn't real. This is all there is. And to see it and observe it in each moment is truth. Truth is a living thing. And life is living, right? So truth is, in some sense, life, observing life in every moment without the corruption of the past coming into play. So, all right, talk. Here we are at the Working Woods across the street from Holden, an old growth forest network. This is very interesting. There's a lot here, as we can see, as it says in this sign. Working Woods is a 67-acre living laboratory and site for forest management. So they do a lot here. They learn a lot. This is an interesting place. Very muddy to get in here. Guess we could chance it. I've got my hiking boots on. This is a deer fence. We'll put my hiking boots to the test. Let's see how good they are. Normally this is something I would avoid because I really never had the proper hiking boots. I had Chacos, which are great for hiking when it's not wet. Well, even when it's wet, you can still hike in them. Your feet get wet, but they dry fairly quickly. But like in all this mud, you know, your feet would get really muddy and uncomfortable. So I don't feel a thing right now. These hiking boots are working pretty well, keeping my feet dry. So this is different. We haven't been here before. This is a forested area, a wooded area. But just look how green everything is and alive everything is. So yes, I love sunny days. But I think on days when it's not so sunny, I kind of like coming in the woods and remembering what's happening here. You know, that life is happening here in so many ways. I mean, the woods are dense here with trees and living things of all kinds, plants and animals that live amongst all this. Very swampy trail right now. Muddy trail, but that's okay. Got my hiking boots on. Fun to do something different. Sometimes it's good to let the stream of words end, or they can just continue. You know, sometimes one word leads to the next word in an endless stream. And sometimes that leads to idle chatter. Just words that are coming and going from the thoughts that are arising. And sometimes when that stream of thoughts or words ends, there's a moment of peace from all that thinking, which takes a lot of energy. Sorry, I guess I got something in my throat. There's always something very peaceful about walking alone in the woods or amongst nature of any kind. Sometimes I even catch myself thinking about what I'm going to do next in the day, which takes me away from what I'm doing now. So why worry about what you're going to do next, later, or tomorrow? If this is how time comes into play, right? Because time is like the future. Anything we think about we're doing later is about the future, which isn't now. In some sense it is now, in that all time is now, in that the future is happening right now. The thoughts of the future is happening now. The brain, right, is having thoughts about the future now. But that's not the future. It's thoughts about the future. When does the future ever come? It never comes. All there ever is now. And what's happening now. And when you see the future, this future that we speak of, as being just thoughts that are arising, you start to see time for what it is. I remember this one saying that time is what keeps everything from happening all at once. Maybe everything is happening at once. And our bodies, by their nature, are filtering that in some sense. You know, that because the bodies and minds are of time and are of change, we perceive time according to how our body and mind perceives time. But is there really time? Like, in what sense is time real? It's very important to go into things, right? We take for granted words like time, the past, you know. And sure, time is what a clock measures, right? And we can build clocks and they can measure time. But again, if you weren't observing the clock and having thoughts, a stream of thoughts, which is like your own internal clock, right? The memories that are being imprinted in your brain in some way is like a clock that's keeping track of what's happening and recording it. And that recording is how we have memories, which is the only way we would know about the past. If we didn't have memories recorded in our brain, how would we have any concept of the past? So something to think about. What would you be like? In some sense, I guess people that have amnesia have that experience. It's a timeless experience, right? They're not experiencing time in the way that we do. I mean, even people with amnesia, right, are recording short-term memory. They may have lost long-term memory, but if you didn't even have the ability to record anything, no experience, so from one second to the next, you have no memory of that previous second. What would the past become to you? Would it have any reality at all? And we talked about thought being a reaction to memory, memory being a recording of the past in some way or the other. However that works, we don't need to know how the brain works. We can observe our own mind and say, yes, I have memories. I know they're there. And there's some relationship with the brain. You know, we know that the brain is some mechanism for storing memories. However it does it. And through disease or experimentation, people have played around with the brain and shown that, you know, you can have experiences if certain parts of the brain are stimulated. You can have hallucinations. You can remember the past as if it was now. All sorts of interesting things, right? So clearly the brain is a recording device for memories. Thought, being a reaction to memory, results from that. So without memory, there would be no thought. By the way, there would be no thought of the future either. So these thoughts of the past, which we may call memories, but then also we have thoughts of the future, which we could call projections of memories, because thoughts of the future are often just projections of memories. Where you have a memory of, say, I don't know, a coffee shop, and you think about where you're going to be a couple hours from now. Maybe you'll be at that coffee shop, so you have a memory of it. And you project that to the future and say later, because we have this concept of psychological time, I will be at that coffee shop. I wouldn't know anything about that coffee shop if it weren't for my memory of it. So without the memory, you can't also have projections of the future, because what would you project? Nothing. So the future is just projections of the past. So without all of that, without these thoughts, interfering, right? So even though we have a brain that is recording thoughts, there's not a whole lot we can do about that. It's a material process that's occurring. I mean, it may be possible for the structure of the brain to change in such a way that it doesn't record so much, but it's not something we have to think of, but just be aware that if the brain is doing all these things, the brain could also not do these things, right? The brain is like a device, it's a machine. It could enter into a different state or a different process, right? Change the programming. The brain is very much like a program, very much like a computer, and we see this with AI, that there's so many analogies that the brain being a mechanical device in so many ways, like a computer, can be altered, can change, but rather than bring about like a change externally, the brain itself, by its own realization of what it is, and understanding of what it is, may perhaps be able to bring about a change, a physical change in its functioning and how it functions. And in a lot of ways, this pattern of thinking of ourself, right, what prevents us from perhaps being fully present in the moment is this mind, this brain, that's doing so much and having so much activity, that if that activity were to slow or halt or, you know, undergo some sort of change in the programming, then perhaps it wouldn't interfere so much with the now. But even to say experience, you don't want to say experience the now, right? Because experience brings in memory as well, because in order to experience something, you have to relate it to something that has already happened to you. So you often relate experiences with past events. You know, I want to experience mountain climbing, so I have some idea what mountain climbing is already before I even experience it. Then you go there, and you experience, and you know what you're doing because of those memories you have. And you record that and you say, I have experienced. So the memories of your experience are how you can say, I had an experience. If you experience something and don't record it, it's not an experience. It is just the moment coming and going. Well, never coming and going. The moment is the moment. It always is. It isn't coming or going or doing anything. It just is. Definitely going to have to check myself for ticks after all this high grass that we're walking through. So yeah, just, you know, what's great about walking through a trail like this is, you know, think, use the brain, use thought. Don't be afraid of it. We need to be sane and we need to be thoughtful to the extent that thought can operate. And then we just need to also see the limitations. We shouldn't reject thought. We shouldn't look at thought as a bad thing. Thought is what occurs. Just realize the limitations of thought. But let thought do its job, and then it's over. Know when thought ends. And then thought just, you know, finds its place, right? Order. And the art of living is putting everything in the proper place, including thought. So then thought sees the place and the role it plays, but not assumes control. And that assuming of control is the self, which is just this pattern of thoughts that believes it's the controller, the experiencer, the thinker, the doer. But is that true? That's what you need to look into. What is that thinker or doer that I give so much power to. It may in fact be nothing but just a pattern of thoughts in the brain, the center of the brain. So just see that happening. There isn't anything to do. Like, you don't actively try to end that. You just observe that. There's no, the observing is the action. There's nothing else to do. Through observing, you learn, and intelligence arises through direct observation. That intelligence acts. Not that you learn something and then act from that experience. The intelligence that arises knows what to do or not do. And that intelligence is not of thought. The same intelligence that makes all life possible. And it's sometimes frustrating for me when people say science, use science interchangeably. Or someone may say God willing or something, right? And someone might come along and say science willing. I heard that the other day. And I thought, why are you doing that? Why are you, what you're actually doing there is showing the similarity between your view of science and what someone might view as God. It's the same thing. You think you're more intelligent or that somehow you know more by saying science instead of God, but you really don't. Because it's such an arrogant, egotistical thing to say. Because science, as we currently understand it, is not complete either. It is just our accumulation of knowledge about the world that lets us know partially about things, but to then elevate it to the status of divinity, or to put all your faith in science. Why would you put all your faith in a partial, incomplete thing like science? Science doesn't have the answers for everything. We talked about that. It's just such an arrogant thing to do. And the people that do that are just retreating to science in the same way that somebody would retreat to a religion. They want authority. So their authority may not come from a priest, it comes from a scientist or a public talking head who portrays himself as a scientist. But then is just nothing more than a scared little child who also just wants security in this world. They just found it a different way. Thinking again that science somehow has all the answers. There are no answers through science. Science is a very limited thing as well, because it comes from human thought, just like everything else. So religion and science both come from the same place. Thinking. One may think they're better than the other, but they're not. So just see that. And you say, well, what do you mean? Well, so what, if not science, if not religion, then what? Well, then nothing. Stop having an authority figure, regardless of where it comes from, whether it's through religion, through science, whatever. It's just the same. Once you see thought as the common cause for all of this, then anything that comes from thought is the same. This is why, to transcend that, thought must end, which is death. And not just propagate the thinking in a different way. So yes, science is useful for what it does, which is really just learning about particular things. you know. So I want to learn about a plant or an animal or physics or whatever, chemistry. It has its uses in that limited sense. Do not extrapolate that to an understanding of everything. It is not holistic understanding. Holistic understanding cannot come from thought. But this is the vicious cycle, right? Because thought then comes in and says, well, then what is it? What do I have to do? And it's like, you do nothing. That's, you don't do anything. It's the doing that's the problem. It's the thinking that's the problem. See that. Then there's an end to the doing, to the wanting, to the striving, to the searching. Because as long as thought is there, it's going to want to find that. Find the truth. If not here, well, then I'll look somewhere else. Look nowhere. End the looking. It's not about motion or direction or motive. You know, it's ending all of that. And then there's an understanding that does not come from thought, that is there. And doesn't have to be sought out because it's there. The seeking is what takes you away from what's there. What's there is there. There's nothing more to do. Just observe what's there. And that's the hardest thing to do, because we have been conditioned to be problem solvers. We've been conditioned our whole life to learn a certain way. We've been told things by authority figures. And I understand a lot of this is repetition, right, of what we've said before, because again, we're not, you know, what I'm inquiring. You know, and that's why this is not something I'm trying to teach or convey. This process of inquiry is occurring in this brain, and the brain is seeing its limitations, and through that process articulating some of it, but also realizing that is, even that articulation is a continuation of the problem. So the words really must end. And then there's silence. But not a silence brought about by thought, ending anything. Thought can't bring about silence. There's no method or process or meditation. Typically how people think of as meditation is to bring about that silence. That's not silence then. It's a man-made temporary condition, right? You may bring about an altered state of consciousness or bring about a state of calm, but that is not real peace, not real silence, because it ends. The minute you come out, you snap out of it, right? You're back to your problems. And this is what distraction does for us, because whenever you distract yourself, you may distract yourself by drinking alcohol. Fine, for that moment, your brain is in a different state, maybe you feel more relaxed or whatever, but it ends, right? It wears off, and then you're back in yourself. Then what? You haven't resolved anything. You've taken the energy that you could have used to actually resolve what's happening, what the problems are. You simply are covering up temporarily. So either you have to drink constantly, right? Keep yourself in an inebriated, intoxicated state, but then you're not aware, right? You're sleeping. You're not awake. And to really understand things, your mind should be fully alert, not put to sleep, right? Sleep is not what we're talking about. It's being awake to everything and not asleep, which is why everyone gets it wrong, because everyone's striving for peace and silence. You know, I saw an advertisement for this Calm app the other day, and they were, you know, it's just another game that people play. You know, well, the Calm app, it calms me down, right? So I listen to oceans and and whatnot. Yes, it does have that, it can have that peaceful effect. It's, in some sense, bringing about a calmness. But then what happens the minute someone walks in the room and starts talking to you? It's gone. So it was an artificial state created by conditions that are only there for a while, and then when those conditions are gone, your mind returns to the same disorderly state it was before. It's achieved nothing. It's temporary. So what we have to be aware of and see are that all these conditioned things, right, end. And anything that has a beginning has an end. And that's true of meditation as well, or any sort of process has a beginning, has an end. It's not truth. True meditation is the ending of thought, the emptying of consciousness, of its contents, which is everything that we've been conditioned and all of our memories and thoughts and beliefs, and not adding more to it, not adding another method that I have to learn. And there's no method to that, right? There can't be a method to ending thought, because the method itself would be of thought and therefore empower thought in just a different way. It's just, you're just playing around. You're moving from one field to another field. So meditation is important, but meditation is what the universe is doing now. It's not being directed by thought. It's that process of flow that's always occurring, and to be aware of that is meditation. To be aware of the nature and structure of thought at every moment, including when you're disturbed, when you're happy, when you're sad, right? You can't just want peace, because peace is temporary as well. Peace is not always happening, right? You're not always peaceful. You can be aware, always though, you can be aware of being peaceful, you can be aware of being not peaceful, and that intelligence that arises through that awareness of how you are all the time, not just momentarily, not in any conditioned state, but aware of all of this. That awareness, that intelligence that is there, when one pays attention, is true meditation. And there's no method to it. No method driven by thought. So just walk, just get out, just get away, and observe. You don't need anything else. You don't need anyone telling you anything. And that's all I'm doing. So yeah, these are the greater places of Holden in a lot of ways. Very quiet places. And it does give you time to be with yourself, to be with this mind, this brain, always occupied. And to slow down a bit and see things as they are. And one would say, well, okay, well, you're talking about all this, and here you are going to a place like Holden where you are away from things, you are more peaceful, and there's no doubt about that. I am here, it is peaceful. And there's nothing wrong with that. I'm not saying that there's anything wrong. It's just that's not enough. That isn't just putting yourself in a, bringing yourself to a peaceful place for a moment without without inquiring, doesn't lead to intelligence or understanding. You must go into it, You must use the brain and the mind, the human mind, to think, sanely, cleanly, and must observe and do everything that the human mind is capable of doing fully and completely, not partially, not focusing on any one thing, not worrying about any one thing, observing everything, whatever's happening around you at every moment. But what a beautiful day. Sometimes beauty just stops you in your tracks, you know. I'm looking here and I'm just seeing all this grass and flowers, and it's all here. It's here whether I'm here or not here, you know, it's just here. The sky is blue. Up there, trying desperately to be blue, but there's also clouds. And the wind. Just to hear the sound of the wind as it blows through the trees. I mean, this is timeless. Like, these are things that don't require you to do anything but step outside and observe. So why do we try to do so much more than that? I will be very surprised if I don't have a number of ticks on me after all this. As I said before, they're very bad around here right now. Just what a magical place this is. Every place is magical if you just pay attention to what's really happening. To go outside, just to find the extraordinary in the ordinary. And it doesn't even need to be extraordinary, just ordinary. All right. Well, I think I've done enough talking. Maybe I'll walk a little here without saying too much. And then we'll say goodbye until next time.